Hello and welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. This is the Wednesday Roundtable edition being done on Thursday. Luke Wyatt not joining us today, needed a break to spend some time for family. Good for him. I hope to be doing the same thing this time next week when I'm out in Colorado. We got a lot to talk about today, Billy. We've got Diego Pavia getting another year. We got bowl prep. We got transfer portal. We got basketball. We got questions in the mailbag. We got questions in the mailbag from last week. So this could go over the place, but I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff in this one today.
Yeah, it's funny. I texted you last night. We gonna have anything to talk about tomorrow in
No.
the roundtable? But yeah, pretty amazing timing with Pavia yesterday, and I think Joey and I talked about it yesterday as well. The timing was great. I mean, I again, it lingered a little bit, and I think obviously there were people on the board that were getting restless. I don't blame them. But at the end of the day, for them to get this resolved, Chris, at the time they did, is big for the program right now. It's big for the future. It's big for the portal. All of a sudden, you got an offensive lineman commit right after that. And I just wonder what does this mean for a receiver out of the portal, another offensive
Yeah.
lineman? Does this get them another guy or two that maybe they weren't going to get? And if this didn't happen, like I think we all felt good about it, Chris, and obviously Clark Lee did. Talking to people, we felt good, but you never knew,
Yeah.
and heck, who knows? There's still things that can go down. But he's going to be a Vanderbilt Commodore next year, and that is, I can't overstate how big that is.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. We got some hoops to cover. Basketball season brought to you by the Wash House. If you're dreading laundry day, who doesn't dread laundry day? If it steals time from the things you truly enjoy, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. Steve Andrew is a good buddy of mine, really good man. They do high quality work with integrity. They have 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry. Their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of. That's your time. Within 24 hours, pick up your nicely folded, fresh, clean laundry ready to be put away. Check out washhouseclean.com. Stop in today. Get your time back. Tell them you heard about it on Vandy Sports. Baseball season, 2 months away. It'll be here before you know it. That will be sponsored by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. We all need ice cream all the time. If our freezer's out of ice cream for more than a couple of days, that's a big upset around the Lee House. The people that get you your ice cream are the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. They are located in Murfreesboro. A partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy to provide purity milk, ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. They supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with Purity, Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs. It's all good. Eat it all. For more information, mpmci.com, and tell them, again, Vandy Sports made you aware of what they do. Billy, I guess Pavia is the biggest story. We unpacked that a little bit. This could have really been a disaster for them if it went the other way. It didn't. I think now the momentum starts working in your favor. They've got to find a better offensive line solution. I still think they need answers at running back that they don't have. Maybe they see it differently. But this is the step that I think, like, if they didn't get this, Jackson Arnold had already gone to Auburn. John Mateer committed yesterday, I think about the time the ruling came down,
Yep.
to Oklahoma. I would think those would be, to me, Caden Salter going to Colorado. He's another one that I think fits the type of quarterback. I don't know if it's coincidence that a lot of those guys made their decisions, or 2 of those 3 guys made their decisions yesterday. But your list of possibilities, if it's not Diego Pavia, got a lot more limited yesterday. Didn't matter. Diego Pavia is your answer. And for people wondering, I think, yeah, it's not done till it's done, and he's not going to be cheap. But I mean, and he was basically tweeting it yesterday. I mean, he's coming back, and
Yeah,
it changes everything.
yeah. I mean, and I think there is a sentiment out there that if this didn't work out, say this was negative news yesterday, and it going the other way, Chris. The other side of that is, okay, yeah, you could have gotten another portal quarterback, but I don't think it was going to be that easy because number one, no Pavia. That means you probably lose an offensive player or two. I mean, that Pavia comes with. I'm not saying you're losing Kill or Beck. Those guys are still there, but and will have still been there. But the dominoes would have fallen pretty quickly, I think, if this was negative news yesterday. So the fact that they got it done, I look at it again. There's the Arkansas receiver Satania that I know they're
Oh,
hard
that's right. He
after
was
right
there.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kevin Byard. This is on defensive side, but Kevin Byard's the little brother, Tawfik Byard from USF. He was on campus. So there's momentum, and to keep it going, Chris. It would have been a downer, a big downer, if this was on the negative side. The fact that they just keep it going, and I know that there's still room to grow with this offense. I still think they need two more receivers. Tight end, I think they're fine right now, and you got to imagine Stowers is definitely coming back now. And then offensive line, still think.
Pause it there for a minute. Do that's been something that's kind of been on our radar for a while. I haven't talked about it because that's something one of us got. I wasn't sure if there was confidentiality there, but now that we've thrown it out there, yeah, Stowers is part of this offense next year, which we think has got to. How would you handicap that?
The chances he's back?
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's back. And that's not, I'm basing that off, and that's really a lot of what Pavia told Joey and I a couple of days ago in the availability. He talked positively about it, and you can kind of read between the lines with Diego, Chris. I know a lot of times, and even Clark, they will reveal things, even if they're not necessarily trying to. Like Clark on the ruling, I mean, felt really good about it.
Hey, well, I give you credit. You had a little something earlier in the year, and you talked about him coming back, and that started to kind of leak out. Like I'm like, how?
And I did, yeah. And I don't know that
get there?
yeah.
How do they get there? And then it started right before the court case. You started hearing the how, and we had to sit on that for a little bit. And now and I think the Stowers thing. I don't know that most people know. Listen to this that Eli's. They might, but I mean, I think judging by the board, the fact that Stowers is probably going to be back is probably news to a lot of people. But that's two pieces like that. 6 weeks ago, nobody was thinking about them being back.
And I was hearing both things, and again, but in this day and age, Chris, you can't believe it until you really see it. And you know that, of course, and that's where I was with everything. I had heard things were coming up, but I was like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. But offensively was the question. I brought it up a couple of weeks ago, I think, on one of these. Chris, defensively, I'm not too worried. And again, they've got to get better defensively. I think there's still good players out there, but offensively was the question, Chris. And if Pavia wasn't back next year, there was going to be a lot more question marks than answers going into next season. Now you have a good chunk of answers, I think, now that Pavia is coming back.
Who have they lost that's hurt? I think losing Hansen hurts because they could have used him inside, but they've been shopping. They're looking to get better on the edges. And Hansen was a better fit at guard. I'm sure they let him know that. And I know people like what happens is when a guy leaves, he was no good anyway. Wasn't going to help us. I don't believe that. I think Hansen could have helped him. It probably just would have been different. But other than that, I'm trying to think like who have they lost that was going to play a role next year.
You lost Devin Lee. He didn't play a ton this year.
No.
Seneniola, Ugo.
I think Lee's just too small.
Yeah. And you just brought in the Texas defensive lineman. You've got Demarion Thomas, who has developed over him. Seabrooks as well, Chris, who you've raved about. Zaylen Wood, who will be back next year. So it was a crowded room there. Ugo and Santaniola, not a big surprise there. I thought Ugo was a guy that could potentially do some things down the road, but again, he's playing behind Rand Fontenette, and good luck getting on the field when you're playing behind him. But yeah, and really nobody other than Hansen. I think the thing with Hansen is just a week or so after Hansen enters the portal, they replace him with one of the top interior offensive linemen in the portal, the kid from Liberty, Jordan White. So, I mean, there's your replacement there. And then you also got the Glass kid from Oklahoma State, who's a top 15 type portal guy as a tackle on the outside. And the quick guard, strong guard, quick tackle, strong tackle, I don't think is for everybody, Chris. And I'm not saying it's a bad system at all. And we had to learn a lot about it. Imagine what those players had to go through, on the offensive line. And Hansen he's played some football, right? He's played a ton of football, and I think he'll do well at Florida State, but I think it's more of a fit thing more than anything. And you're right that he could help them. I don't like that sentiment either that, he wasn't all that, but I do think Hansen was a solid player, but I'm with you, Chris. I don't think they've lost anybody that you go, man, they really needed him this year.
Well, defensive back is the next place I wanted to talk about. They lose DeRicky Wright and C.J. Taylor. I mean, unless there's a magical eligibility. Like, I used to do a chart of eligibility and stuff, on our site. Like, this guy could play. I gave that up 2 years ago just because you never know when a gift's going to drop out of the sky like it did with the Pavia thing. I just don't even try. Plus the fact that everybody's actually going to stick around.
Yeah.
It's just a kind of a waste of time with speculation. But anyway, and I hope we get back to an era where like you can actually have some degree of predictability. I think it makes it easier on everybody. But don't forget Dante Carter. There was talk about he might be their starting safety, and he did play in the Virginia Tech game, kind of got lost, but you'll presumably get him back next year. There's three guys I want to talk about. Like, it's like adding guys in the portal without doing it. And they had Grayson Morgan never played a snap this year, right? Unless I missed something. He's a starting caliber lineman for them next year, I would think, if he's healthy. Then you have the two.
I'm leaning there too. Yeah,
you have the two DBs that were really high level players at FBS schools. Jones,
Davis and Jones. Yep.
Yeah, who really played well and might have been starters for them this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think height was so good. That's one thing I think people kind of. If there was an underrated kid on this team this year, I think it was Martell Height. I don't know that he got enough love for what he did, but now that they had Jordan Matthews from Tennessee, like we were watching them at the Tennessee game, and like they're Jalen Lackey. I don't say this disparagingly, but that, the fact they had to line up a true freshman against guys really
that's where they
athletic,
were
playing 5 years of football really hurt them because they didn't have anybody else left. Like, that UT game might play a little differently. I'm not saying they would have won, but I don't think that Brew McCoy takes 187 across the middle. Maybe for those FBI. And look, there's a lot of teams that could play this. It's not like Vanderbilt's the only team that had injuries, but I'm just saying – you've got three guys right there in between more of those two DBs that I think will help them a lot next year, presuming they're healthy, that aren't portal additions, but yet it's the same thing.
Yeah, you look at the secondary as a whole, I thought they played for as healthy as they were. I thought they did just about everything they could with the bodies they had. You lose Davis and Jones before the season even starts, and thank goodness that they will both be back this year. You wonder what they both look like. Spring and fall will be big for them. But Colby Taylor, what happens there? We've heard some things there. he's still here. He'll play in the bowl game. There will probably be a decision to be made there from the staff. Bringing in Jordan Matthews might indicate something there. He played in every game at Tennessee. Didn't only had 3 tackles, a couple of pass breakups, but he is a former 4-star recruit. Chris, just about every portal player they picked up is a former 4-star recruit that I don't want to say hasn't panned out, but in a year or 2 or even 3 for some older guys, they haven't produced necessarily at their schools, which is really interesting. I think it's a good strategy because you're not going to outbid for these elite players. You're not. Now you can go after you can aim for a couple of big fish in each class each year, I think, and shoot your shot. But it's not always about outbidding either.
Right.
There's still some negative recruiting going around, and this is always going to be the case with Vanderbilt, as you know, Chris. You've heard about it. Like, hey, do you want to go to Vanderbilt or do you want to come here and not have that class load and
the class load is a big thing that's hurting them. I think right now.
Yeah. And I know it's changed, and I think they are working to change. Not necessarily maybe class load, but just what that perception. And they know that that's hurting them. But I know for sure, Chris, they've missed out on at least a couple of guys because of that.
Hurts them for baseball too, by the way.
Oh yeah. So the secondary will be better. I really am curious with Jones and Davis after not playing last year. I know they're older guys. What do they look like? Still think there's probably another corner out there, a good corner out there for them. Safety. Dante Carter, Marlon Jones is a safety. That'll be interesting to see.
Okay.
So Carson Lawrence too from Macaulay
that's
coming
right.
up he'll compete. So there is some depth building there, Chris. I'm still wondering how they shape out that corner room. Because you're losing some. I know Russell, gets a bad rap on the board, but that's a veteran guy you're losing. Height and Davis would be my guess, at least right now.
Yeah.
And that's way far out.
But I think Height's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his difference in play, and this would be my my positive spin on the Jalen Lackey situation. I'm not saying you're saying
that's where I was going to go next. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, just that experience this year helps. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's something to watch with Lackey, and he physically looks the part, and then bringing in Matthews, for depth, they look the part at these positions, Chris. And so that's you're looking at a little bit of a higher floor, each year now, especially with the portal. And I think their strategy is a good one that fits them.
Well, they had to get bigger and stronger in the trenches. I think when you watch them against other SEC teams as the season wore on, first of all, it's amazing they got as much as they got out of what they had because you could really see the deficiencies. And I think that's where, I mean, and everybody's looking at facilities going forward. Billy, they've still got a weight room. I've been in bigger weight rooms in high schools in Nashville than they've got.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing you wish they would have gone and sped this up and already got pushed back a couple of years ago. I mean, this should have all been ready. And I wonder how much different it looks if they got the football building done on time. Then you've already got guys lifting over there in the bigger weight room. That's going to help them. I think what they've done, and watch this as a thing. Their high school class this year was low by design. It's hard for them to run freshmen off. So if you can't run freshmen off, just don't sign them. Go get transfers. Go get transfers, especially on the lines that use other people's weight rooms. And here's the thing. Like, we weren't really talking about Sidner and Wood. They were just, all right, they're guys. They signed as depth pieces. When they were well and healthy, especially Wood, and that's another one that they haven't had him since, September?
Yeah. I mean,
presumably get him back. Now, I don't know if he ever stays healthy because he didn't at middle either, but those are some things to watch. They're getting bigger there with guys that have gone and used other teams' weight programs, and I think are going to fill in and help them a lot.
Yeah, and I like the conversation there, kind of the fireside chat with Barton, and then I got a chance to talk to him as well at the NIL event. But their strategy. He said you got to learn what motivates these guys, and you've got to. I mean, these coaches, they're talking to these kids for about a week, saying, "Hey, come be a part of our program for the next year at least." Let me learn about you. I mean, like there's relationships are slowly dying, which I know hurts Clark Lee in this program, but this is how they know they have to survive. And I credit them. And yeah, they were behind. I think we've talked about that, but they're back, to a level where they can compete. And I go back to that Virginia Tech game, Chris. The transfers made an immediate impact. And it wasn't necessarily, man, look at these a couple of sacks from Wood, and it was just the pressure they were getting. And I know Wood, that staying healthy was big, but that's a model that you can say, hey, look at the impact Cinder and Wood made on our defensive line. Let's bring in a guy like Keanu Coate from Alabama, who maybe didn't produce as much as he wanted to at Alabama, but can stay in the SEC, can live in Nashville, can play at a high level, and have a chance to get drafted and win and win. These guys want to win. And so I think, as opposed to thinking about, well, how, and Barton got into this too, like, is this guy going to rock the boat? We can't worry about that right now. Our concern is winning football games, and I credit them. Like, that's you haven't had a mentality like that from the top down at Vanderbilt football. I don't know. I mean, obviously since Franklin, but
yeah,
that's just it's what they had to do.
Well, there's Will Shepherd rock the boat, and there's Diego Pavia rock the boat. And they went from one rock the boat that they didn't need to another one that they did. So rock the boat to me is not
it can be positive,
a bad term around that program, because I think the Pavia, Beck, Kill, coming in and wait, what is this? Like, without that, they're not where they are.
No, that's the rock the boat they needed. And and we'll have a lot more time in the offseason to talk about the transformation, but it's the Jerry Kill effect. That's what Pavia talked about, and he's still playing a part in what they're doing. So it's going to be fun to continue to track this. And with the Birmingham Bowl, does this get more people to the Birmingham Bowl? How does this affect season tickets? Like, talked to somebody the other day, Chris. If this doesn't get people interested in back in First Bank Stadium and selling it out, I really don't know what will.
Yeah.
This is what you had to have if you're the Vanderbilt marketing department. Now they gotta go to work.
I may save my thoughts for another episode on that, because we got a lot of ground to cover. But the fan base, to me, like, the size of it may be the story for next year. Like, I want to see. I think to me, and I guess I'll just lay out my main points. I don't know that I want to get too in the weeds about it today. To me, how many people show up in Birmingham? Watch that, and how many people show up? Like, when they play, let's say they play Tennessee January the 18th in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they've gone like 0-4 to start the SEC, then maybe it's a different conversation. But say they're 2-2 at that point. That one in the Kentucky game, the 25th, those are going to be really good barometers. Like, can you put 10, 11,000 of your people in the building there anymore? I don't know that you can. I don't know that you can. I don't know if they can get to 10 for their fans for any game in basketball anymore. I have a real question, but between that, like, I'm going to just use these as benchmarks, okay? 10 years ago, they would have probably put, 12,000 there of people in the gym for an SEC game? 11?
Yeah.
And it would, 20 years ago, it would have been 15. But in Birmingham, I think they brought 35,000 to Birmingham. That was my guess from what I remember being down there. Yep. Start using those as baselines for percentages to estimate your fan base. Because I think, and especially Birmingham, and maybe 2 days after Christmas makes a difference. I think the other one was after January, so maybe people aren't as tied up with holiday. But if they go down and they bring 15,000 to Birmingham, I don't know what the number is going to be. Then you can probably say, all right, the fan base has been cut by half.
Well, and I'll be down there, and I'm gonna try to get that answer.
I'm
I'm gonna ask
very interested because
I'm
that's going
gonna
to tell
ask
me a lot about
somebody.
what's left.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask somebody from the Birmingham Bolt how many Vanderbilt fans are here.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested, like you, Chris. I agree with you, and I wasn't there in 2014, but 35,000 sounds about right, and that almost seems impossible now. And again, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not.
If they
But
can't get 25,000 in Birmingham and they can't get 10,000 of their people in the building, well, I mean, it needs to be
well, and
red alert anyway. But if they can't, that really needs to be alarm bells going off.
and I wouldn't be stunned if they don't get 35,000. Here's why: because that was after two straight 8-win
Yeah.
seasons. You had a 9-4 season, and then you followed it up with another 8-4 season. And you're going to Birmingham. This was in January, I think. You knew what you were getting,
Yeah.
pretty much game in, game out, from James Franklin and that team. And you could argue you're at that point now, but it's just been this year. But now I look at with Pavia back and in the fold, and he said this is as healthy as he'll be going back to Virginia Tech. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, why don't you make the 3-hour drive down a couple of days after
And
Christmas? I
see, and
mean,
that's my point. It's going to tell you
yeah,
what's left. Like what is their draw when everything goes right? What's left? Because it's going to
yeah,
affect your season ticket base. I mean, they've done a really poor job. They've done nothing to appeal to fans, but that's going to tell you your starting point. All right, if everything's going well, how many people are going to show up?
I can't wait to see. And then
Yeah,
you're right about basketball too. They're winning, but you know,
yeah.
we talk about winning is all that matters. I've always said, and I'm not going down the rabbit hole here. I know we got to get to the mailbag questions, but it's not that simple at Vandy. I've always said that.
Well,
Um,
it should be, but I mean,
it should be
there's always issues, but when you don't make an effort,
right.
and there hasn't been
And
an
yeah,
effort in at least a decade, then
yeah,
you run into problems, and to me, that should be top of the list of priorities for the school next year.
yeah. And that's another story for another time.
Yeah, that's I already spent several more minutes on that than I wanted, but that one's been percolating in the back of my head. Like, how many people show up in Birmingham? Because to me,
Yep.
that's a big tell as to what they've got left.
Yeah, that's going to be huge.
Let's do basketball before we get to the mailbag. Vanderbilt blew out the Citadel last night. Unsurprisingly, the Citadel's awful. But I think there were some things to like. McLaughlin continues to bring it every night. Edwards is their go-to guy. Tyler Tanner apparently is never going to turn the ball over. They've got a formula. They've got an identity. I felt like they never had that under Jerry. You just never really knew what they were. This is the team that they're gonna shoot it from a lot of places. They're not a great shooting team, but they've got a lot of guys who can hoist them up, and they force a lot of turnovers with those guards to get easy buckets on the other. Now the SEC is going to be unlike it's never been before, but you got to give Mark Byington an A for what he's done. A month and a half in.
Yeah, I mean, it was business as usual. They score 100 points for the second time this season, and that can't say I expected that before the season. And Chris, margin of victory matters no matter who you're playing.
Yeah.
In the net, and they were at 55 before that game against the Citadel. They're up to 40 now. They're 40th in the net. I mean, that's almost unfathomable at this point. But and again, that's still where I'd be interested. Where does that rank among SEC teams? Probably bottom 3,
13th.
Yeah, 14th. So I talked about this with Joey. If they can get to 7, you're on the bubble. and heck, maybe even 6 SEC wins, you're on the bubble. No matter what, this team might be on the bubble.
I don't think SEC wins, they don't matter except as they add to your total. And remember, we found this out 2 years ago. Vanderbilt and A&M both found it out. The conference tournament didn't matter, because that was your Vanderbilt win 11-7,
right,
and 8-10 Mississippi State, 8-10 Arkansas both got in over them.
mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and I wonder how much the committee will value the SEC wins that Vanderbilt does have. And at home, they're going to have to get those wins, because on the road, it's going to be an absolute gauntlet this year. But yeah, nice win. And, they play a pretty good Austin Peay team Saturday. That'll be another chance to move up in the net. I mean, if they can keep it rolling, but that break, I think, really helped them. And then you start SEC play early January at LSU. So it's a nice win. And Chris, you never know who's going to show up. Like, you never know what's going to happen with this team in a good way. It's like the opposite of the Stackhouse regime, where you didn't know what was going to happen night in, night out, but that was a bad thing. For this team, you don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be good. McLaughlin could have a double-double. Nickel could hit 4 threes, but Edwards could only have 4 points, and you could still win. I think it's a really good sign for this team. They rebound well. The rebounding is going to be huge, especially with no Kajani Wright. So, good win, and they'll keep it rolling Saturday at Memorial against Austin Peay.
I'll have you grab the mailbag, but one more thing. I thought that Edwards, that's 5 games in a row he's been 19 or more, and he's starting to share it a little bit more. You're seeing him pass up shots. So seeing that you've got a identifiable go-to guy who's willing to give it up when a guy's got a better look, to me, that's been one of the major steps in the right direction the last couple of weeks, is seeing that.
Yeah. No, I mean, Edwards has impressed me easily the most, out of anybody, as good as McLaughlin has been in spots, as well as Nickel. This team is fitting better than I think many people expected they would at this point in the season.
The mailbag is presented by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are, if they can help. Guest line presented by John Levin, good friend of the show, Wobblebine Dickinson. Thanks the student-athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. The guest line also presented by Yeaman Packaging Systems, leaders in end-of-the-line packaging automation. I guess it's not the guest line, but just let's wear our own guests here. But anyway, thank you to those who helped make this possible. Billy, let's start the mailbag. I'll let you read them and give your answer, and I'll give mine.
All right, we're going to start with some from last week, actually, that we missed. Apologies. But Doors alum, early thoughts on men's basketball compared to expectation and current prediction for results with the SEC schedule. Again, compared to expectation, I expected them to be better, but a lot of it for me was eye test, Chris, and they've exceeded my expectations so far. For them to be 10-1 at this point in the season with as much momentum as they have heading into SEC play, I can't say I expected that. Prediction for results, the SEC schedule, I mean, I would say I think they get to at least 6 wins in the SEC, which would put them at 6-12. Can you get that 7th? Can you get that 8th? We'll see, but I'll say they get to 7 SEC wins. That would be my pick right now.
That's probably where I'd settle. I would watch those first 4. Let's say that they get Austin Peay and New Orleans. That's going to be, and I think they'll get them both. Austin Peay might be a little bit of a concern. But I think, boy, if you can go 3-1 in those first 4, and those are LSU there, which I think LSU and South Carolina are the worst 2 teams in the league, worst being very relative. They're still good teams. But you get LSU game 1 on the road. Then you got Mississippi State here, winnable. Missouri there, winnable but tough, as Kansas just found out. And then South Carolina here. If you by chance can go 3-1, I think you're on the positive side of the bubble at the time being, before you go Tennessee here, Alabama there, Kentucky here, Oklahoma there, Florida there. Followed by, goodness gracious, Texas here, Auburn here, Tennessee and Kentucky there. Oh Lord,
Oh my gosh.
this is Ole Miss here, A&M there. That is an unrelenting break of 1, 2, 3, and not like any of those other four breaks. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gosh,
That's going to be a
the
war.
the only game they're favored in there to win, according to Ken Palm, is the Texas game here, and that's by a point.
Wow. Not going to be easy.
And if you weren't aware, Oklahoma last night beat Michigan in the final seconds, and I think that's a really good Michigan team.
By the way, Oklahoma beat Michigan. Yeah, they're in the SEC now, of course. I mean, the SEC has just turned into the best league in the country. Not even close. I mean, they have dominated other conferences. Let's see.
You've got to go at least 2-2 and probably 3-1 in those four if you're going to have any chance.
Which is really tough. Okay, second part for Doors alum. Any regrettable departures to the portal so far? We got into that. Not really. I mean, if anybody, Hanson, I think we both agree, Chris. How does the staff feel about their ability to upgrade based on early results? Based on early results, I mean, I think on the offensive line, they've upgraded for sure. You brought in Jordan White from Liberty, who by most, sites is a top 3, top 4 interior offensive lineman out of the portal. You brought in Isaiah Glass from Oklahoma State, who's a phenomenal tackle. I say phenomenal. Good, experienced guy.
Upgrade.
That was definitely an upgrade. The tech guy, he's not going to – I don't think he'll start. Maybe he's an upgrade at some of those depth spots. Chris, they were thin on the offensive line. So I think they've upgraded there. At corner, I think they feel good about their potential upgrade, not even with guys out of the portal, but you go back to last year's portal, get with Davis and Jones like we talked about. Receiver, do they feel good? I don't know. I mean, I think they should now with Pavia, but there hasn't been a receiver come out of the portal, and that's what we're waiting on.
Running back is where I'm worried. Are they tied to any running backs of consequence?
No, and I think Cedric Alexander and Newberry would be the guys they're sticking with, and
but none of those guys are explosive.
I know, and
I'm not dogging him, but
yeah, I've said the same thing in conversation. At this point, if they don't already have a running back, and McKylan Young, that's a guy they already technically had committed. But I'm with you, Chris. I think they need, as much as they need a receiver or two, I still think you can upgrade at running back. But would you live with having Alexander and Newberry as opposed to so you can pay what you need to get, a really good receiver? Yeah,
but it's not ideal.
No. How does our NIL budget look, and will that be competitive? Chris, I mean, we've thrown the 20.5 million out there, and
well, they're going to have to spend that part of that revenue share starting probably next year. The question is what goes to football, and I'm watching to pay real careful attention to where they allocate by sport. And by the way, you're going to need NIL on top of revenue share.
Right.
Vanderbilt's first blush is always going to be to allocate to sports that other schools aren't allocating to. That's always their first move. We'll see if that is a thing or if they have changed. Because remember, like when they started NIL back when it started, what they did is everybody across all sports got an equal amount. Didn't matter if you were the quarterback of the football team or the third team goalie on the women's soccer team. You all got the same. That is always their first move. And now that it's going to be up to them, I'm interested to see where it goes. Because if you start allocating it to sports that other teams aren't, that's a loser for your football team and your basketball team and your baseball team for that matter.
All right. With no coaches seemingly on the hot seat and some of the larger construction projects finishing up, where does McGugan's focus shift? I don't really know where that question's going. I mean, I don't know where McGugan's focus will shift, but let's see here. TC Stevenson, why does it feel like Greg Sankey wants to turn college football into a regional sport like college baseball? I don't really know that he does. I think he knows he's got the best conference in the country. The Big Ten
I
probably
don't.
has an
Yeah,
argument there, though.
I don't know if that's fair. I mean, he's trying to do the best to put out the best product by his league. If that's, I mean, all your teams happen to be down here. I get what he's saying, but that's America. You try to win. You try to beat everybody. Do I always like the way it happens? No, but that's competition.
Let's see here. Keep it rolling. I want to try to hit on all the ones we missed last week. We've already got the quarterback prediction out there. In the portal, Chris, you probably know this. What are the going rates for a wide receiver, running back, offensive lineman, and defensive lineman?
I'm not sure. I would think a quality, like a really good tackle, would cost you at least $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would think of if it doesn't resemble football and resource allocations, because now it is essentially professional football. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've seen I need to pull this tweet up for the quarterback number. I think it's like 1.3 million.
I bet that's low.
Is the going rate, and I mean, hearing Arnold got 2.5 million, or even upwards of 3 from Auburn. So I mean, and in terms of Pavia, I don't know this, but my guess would be up around that 2 range. I mean, and maybe even more. You know, especially with his endorsements. I mean, Raising Cane's, I know he's been involved with, but you know, there's the going rates for these players. I don't know that we even know because they're always going up.
Yep.
Let's see. Let me get through all of these. Have you heard of any rumblings on a new contract for Clark Lee, mainly for additional resources and salary pool?
Nope.
Let's see. Who's our best chance to be an NBA player next from Vanderbilt? It's a pretty good question.
I don't know if there's an NBA player on this team.
Yeah, I don't know if there is either. I mean, everything goes well. I'd probably say Hogard. But, Chris, I look at Tyler Tanner as a kid that all goes well for him in 5-6 years. He could be, you know, G League at least. You know, like I think he is really good. And I think he can continue to get better. But Hogard and Tanner, you know, Edwards, I just don't think has the height. And then other than that, that's hard to pick.
Those were the first two, Hogard and Tanner, that I was thinking. Hogard, I think, if we're an NBA guy, I think he'd already be there.
Mm-hmm.
Could be wrong. You see some guys get, you know, they break through after a few years in the G League. The other one, I think, is Tanner. But how you've stood next to both of them, I think.
Yeah.
How much taller was Pippen than Tyler Tanner? Because Scotty wasn't a big guy, and he's making it right now.
Yeah,
different players, but
Scottie Pippen Jr. 6'1", 170.
I don't know that he was 6'1".
Tyler Tanner 6 foot 170. So probably, I mean, Chris, maybe even same size because you know you're always listed a little bit taller than you actually are. I do think Pippen's a little bit taller than Tanner, but you know, and Tanner's still so young. Maybe he's probably not even done growing yet.
Pippen was more of a point guard. Well, I mean, Tanner can do it. I think he just hasn't.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
He's just kind of a thing of his own.
He is, and I mean, with what he's doing now, I think he's got some real potential. NBA Door also, what are your thoughts on Byington's management / calling the last 5 minutes of our games? He seems to slow it down and allow other teams to draw close and add unnecessary stress to the team. I mean, I don't know that. I really haven't. I've been so locked into football. I mean, I've watched games. I've watched their big games. And Chris, you're probably the same way. But I don't know that that's the case. I trust Mark Byington. I think he's a really good coach. He's coached a ton of basketball. I don't think we should be worried, especially with the previous regime, the late game management at all.
I haven't given it any thought. I mean, they've been ahead in all these games, but one entering the final 2 minutes, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean,
with the possible exception of Nevada, I don't remember the game flow of that one. I think they were ahead. I mean, realistically, if you've got a lead, you want a lower possession game at that point.
mm-hmm.
If you're passing up good shots, that's one thing. But I don't know. Whatever strategic issues there with Mark Byington, just nothing pops out to me. I think he's done a phenomenal job.
OG706, any thoughts on how the NCAA is going to be able to control the spiraling cost of NIL? The budgets for NIL are becoming so large that many schools are going to become uncompetitive. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think that, first of all, the NCAA should have seen this coming long ago. They never see anything coming. You're going to have some kind of collective bargaining. And then I think that the next step is NIL becomes legit NIL. Like if you're going to get paid outside the revenue share, it needs to be for Raising Cane's or, and I think baseball could help them. Like they could get deals with glove manufacturers or whatever. I think that's where I think this is headed. Who knows? But the NCAA is going to have to, I think they need to get to the table quickly and come up with something that's reasonable rather than living in this fantasy land, because the longer they go in fantasy land, the more losses add up in court and the more there's no guardrails on everything.
Okay, we got a baseball question here. How has Tim Corbin accepted and adapted to the NIL era? Well, this is beyond just the NIL era. He brought in a couple of new coaches that had to happen. With Jason King, who's an older coach, but a great hitting coach. We've seen him come here and play with his Dayton team, and they've been at good offensive clubs. Didn't shock the world or anything at Dayton, but he's a good experienced coach. Ty Blankmeyer, infield. I mean, great. He was a good infielder. Forget where he played. He played at St. John's, Chris.
I think that's
his
right.
Dad,
longtime
was coach there at St. John's and coached at Duke. Really good program, as we know. That was the beginning of, I think, him starting to just change in general. NIL, I don't know that he's fully accepted or even adapted to it. But I think he's doing his best, and the program is doing their best to make it work and to make it fit. Again, they are behind, and they're probably the most behind at this point out of football and basketball now. But you saw that they were strategic about the kids they brought in. The kid from James Madison, I think Mancini will make an impact. Kobe Croft, I'm not sure what happened with him, Chris. He entered the portal. And he'll be at Winthrop next year, which that was a big power bat that I expected some things from this year. Now he's not there. What happened there? So I think he's attempting to adapt. I don't know that he will ever fully accept the way things are in today's landscape. Is kind of how I'll put that.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Crop, I'll start with the last thing you talked about. I watched him in the fall a little bit, and I just thought they had a glut of first base DH, corner outfield guys, and he just didn't stand out. I think Riley Nelson, to me, stood out a lot more than he did. You got Maldonado coming back. You've got R.J. Hamilton's going to be a factor. You had, the kid from Indiana, the senior outfielder. That had a good year in the Cape. No, Humphrey's there too, although he's more of a center fielder.
J.D. Rogers?
J.D. Rogers, thank you. I don't know why I went blank. I just think you had a glut of guys there, and he looked like, to me, on the lower end of that. So that might have been a hey, we're 46 guys on the roster, whatever it is. He saw the writing on the wall. I don't think that's a big deal. I think that the bigger picture to me, I have a feeling he's going to try to build the program the way that he did before, and maybe try to get some of these kids through the draft. First of all, I'm hearing that they're doing a
Well,
better
yeah,
job of identifying guys that
recruiting
aren't.
has been good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, we think this guy's coming. Oh, wait, he's not. And Mike Baxter, and I don't mean to take a bunch of shots at Mike Baxter now he's gone. I really like Mike, but I think you look now, what I'm hearing is that they're better at identifying who might, and look, time will tell. That might just be talk. But well, how many guys they lose to the draft the last 3 years? 10 or 12 total? I
A
mean, it was a
lot.
lot. Like when Billy Carlson decommitted and went to Tennessee, my sources are
Mhm.
like, that's not a big deal. He wasn't coming to college anyway. They spent a lot of invested in guys like that, I guess, that weren't going to come.
Mhm.
So, and you look this class, who the guys that everybody's talking about, Billy? It's Brody Johnston, who I think is going to be an impact bat day one next year. I think
Mhm.
he's going to be in the lineup opening day. And Rustin Rigdon, I didn't see it with him, but
Heard
that's
good
gotten
things
a
about him
lot
too.
of buzz
Yep.
lately. He could be a guy that challenges the start. I think you start getting more guys like that. They're impact guys right away. Um, and if you notice, it feels like their recruiting has taken a big uptick
Mhm.
again. Where they're at the top of the heap for some of these guys that everybody wants. And I feel like it had kind of slipped the last couple of years. I think this might be their. I'm hearing a lot of talk that's pointing towards next year, 26 being the year that they're kind of back.
Yeah,
And
they got
it probably the draft next year's draft's gonna be really important. But I think I have a feeling they're gonna be able to use NIL maybe to get some of these kids that are slipping through and taking the money and going pro. Not all of them, not the top
Yep.
five Seth Hernandez's, but maybe some of the ones they were losing before.
Yeah, they got 14 high school commits in the class of 2025 right now. 4 of those guys are top 100 players. They're ranked number 9 in the country according to Perfect Game. And that's really good, but they're used to being ranked top 5.
Yeah.
Maybe even top 3 a lot of years. LSU, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M are all above Vanderbilt. The top 6 are all SEC teams.
Yeah.
And then, but 2026, I think, again, that could be the year. Vanderbilt's number 4 in the country right now in the 2026 class. They've got 16 high school commits already. They're right behind Tennessee, who's at number 3, and 7 of those guys are top 100 players. Eric Booth Jr., they got him from Mississippi. He chose Vandy over Mississippi State and Ole Miss. That's pretty rare. So I think if they can keep enough of these guys in college, you're going to lose some guys to the pros, but if they can keep enough of these guys in college, courtesy of some NIL money, that's key to keep them at Vanderbilt. I think we'll say a lot, but that's just a little update on the recruiting rankings where they stand. The recruiting has picked up for baseball. All right, now let's go to. We got a ton of mailbag questions. We'll start to rumble through these, Chris. G Barks 24 is Vandy leading or landing transfers from programs like Alabama and Texas the next step in its progression as a program and a signal to players that Vanderbilt can be a destination where players get NIL and playing time. So the Alabama and Texas thing, I do think Keanu Coate is a good player. I think that's a really good get and probably the best get so far. Outside of maybe Jordan White, you could argue Jordan White's the best get so far. But getting Keanu Coate as early as they did was a sign of, okay, number one, they're paying. Number two, they've gotten the winning part of it. I mean, they beat Alabama. I would imagine that was part of the sell there for Keanu. I know he was in some trouble, and Chris, I heard,
Allegedly.
yeah, I don't know that he's officially kicked off the team, but again, um, allegedly in some trouble at Alabama. Either way, he's a good player. Was a really good high school recruit, and I don't know that that's a sign of, oh, they're getting guys from Alabama. The Texas guy, Aaron Bryant, is a veteran guy. He's been there for a while, but good size. So I don't think it's the beginning of an Alabama pipeline, but, it's never a bad thing to get players from those type of programs.
Well, look, if you're getting starters at Texas and Alabama to come to Vanderbilt, that's one thing. They're not there. But you've got to have I don't know, 50 guys at least on a roster who can play. And I think one place they were hurting, as we saw late in the year, is those guys 30 to 50 weren't what everybody else had. Now, look, their 1 to 30 weren't either. But when the injuries added up and the depth became an issue, you heard him talk about it. Like, if you can get a guy that's, the number 31 guy on your roster who's better than your number 131 guy was last year, whatever that looks like, you've gotten better. I mean, that's how the Patriots used to do it. They just they didn't have a lot of superstars other than Brady and their tight ends, but they had a lot of really good players a lot of other places. That's what you look for. Do you get guys that are upgrades? Now, when they start doing it at the top, if they ever do, that's when you know that they've really turned the corners of program. Getting kids that can start at those blue chip programs. They're not there yet. They're probably not going to be there anytime soon. But I think this is an improvement.
B3 Vandy. This past year, Vandy has added a bunch of transfers into their football and basketball programs and several of the baseball program. In the past, Vandy has had difficulties with getting athletes admitted to the highly selective admissions department. What has changed at Vandy that makes it now easier to bring in talented athletes into a top 15 university? We've talked about it. They've laxed. Things have changed. I mean, it's easy to see. I realized it. I think I got a full taste of it when Pavia landed here.
Yes.
I mean, when does that ever happen? That's not a Vanderbilt thing to happen. They've laxed. There's just examples that have occurred that, and Chris, you can probably speak to it better than I can, but things have changed. I'll say that. With from the very top, from Deermeyer all the way down. And in credit to him. I mean, I think a lot of it is credit to him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't ever pay attention to what they say because there's never been a time in the history of the program that I've covered it that they haven't said great things and that the critics are wrong. But when you start seeing a Diego Pavia get in, where his previous experience academically was JUCO, New Mexico State, which aren't exactly academic powerhouses. Oh, and the other thing would be the transfer thing. Like, we talked a year ago about how, like, hey, once you get over 60 hours, good luck to you.
Right.
Because it just isn't a good path. That started to change. So that's a place where, yeah, it is different. And they were going to have to do that if they had any shot to win. And hats off to them. They've done it.
Nash Native 615. How much of a difference is landing 4 to 5 stars in 2024 versus signing 3 stars out of high school? Is taking depth from top programs the path to success for future, or is it desperately trying to find a solution to a 3-win season on the horizon? I don't think a 3-win season is on the horizon. I think this is their strategy, and I think they're gonna look at 2 to 3 big fish out of the portal each year. If they land them, great. They land them. They'll try to pay big, but they are not. Money is not a problem. Now, again, if we're talking elite players, yeah, I don't even think. But those players aren't. With all due respect, most of those guys, if not all, are not thinking about going to Vanderbilt. So who can you get? Who can you realistically get into your program? This is what they're doing. I think it's their strategy, Chris. Look at guys that were 4 stars coming out of high school. And you mentioned it with the recruiting class. They only signed 13 kids. This is what they're doing. They're re-recruiting kids, or they're looking at kids from like Keanu Coate, for example. 4-star out of high school, lands at Alabama. Obviously, there's somebody on staff with a relationship with them. You land him, and now, he's helping your program. I think this is it's not desperately trying to find a solution. I just think this is what they know will work best for them.
Yeah. Well, and again, you also have a system that you've made work for me that made you work for you offensively that not everybody's seeing. And that's part of it too. Look, the answer is, if you can do it, go get guys who start at Georgia and Alabama and Texas and make them yours. realistically, that's just not. I guess if they had $50 million they could throw at people, then maybe you could make that happen. Is that realistic? Probably not. Are they making, I think, efficient use of what they got? I think last year is a testament that they are.
Bappa 82. Regarding quarterbacks, was Blaze Berlowitz recruited by Jerry Kill and Tim Beck? Yes, he was. If they thought he fit their profile, why haven't we heard more about him? What did you guys see out of Blaze in fall practices? I've wondered that same thing. Berlowitz is pretty different than Pavia. Now Berlowitz can run. He can run a little bit, but he's a pass first guy. At least what I've seen. I didn't hate what I saw from Blaze out of fall camp. Chris, I he was inconsistent, is what I'd say. But I think there is some potential there. I don't see him ever starting at Vanderbilt. But it's a relationship deal with Jerry Beck and Tim Kill. Jerry Kill and Tim Beck. But he doesn't necessarily fit their profile. Would you agree, Chris? I don't, but maybe I don't.
I'll
maybe
defer
they
to
don't
you on
have
that
a
one.
profile.
What did they have, 8 quarterbacks on the roster or whatever it was last year? I had I missed more fall camp than I have in years because of just dealing with health situations with my parents, and I kind of leaned on you guys. So I'm gonna take your word on that over. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, Berlowitz is a decent player, but I don't think he's as good as obviously Pavia. That's pretty easy to tell. OG 706, have we signed any portal commits that will be actual starters next year? And for the offensive line, brought in for use for depth, how much do you think VU probably pays them? Actual starters, I think Keanu Coate will probably end up starting or at least being in the rotation. I think Jordan White will probably start at center, would be my guess. I think Isaiah Glass likely starts at one of the tackle spots. Other than that, you got your punter, Nick Haberer from Washington State. He'll start. Other than that, I don't know that Jordan Matthews starts the corner from Tennessee. He'll be in the depth rotation there, but those are the guys who will probably start. How much do you think Vandy's paid the offensive lineman? Of course, I would think fairly handsomely.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 figures isn't even really saying much of anything now.
No.
500K? I mean, maybe more. I mean, 500 to 800K? Is that too much for an offensive lineman?
I don't think that's out of line.
So, and they needed that. It was a position of need for them. So they have definitely paid them well, is what I'll say. Let's see. Let's rumble through these. J2M, Vandy hasn't had a running back capable of having a 100-yard game since Ray Davis left. They don't seem to be concerned with going after a big-name running back. I think that's a mistake. What do you guys think? Chris, I know you think it's a mistake. I don't. I see where it could be labeled as a mistake, but I think getting 2 receivers is bigger than getting another stud running back. Is what I'll say. And money wise, do you tell Cedric Alexander to hit the road, clear out some money? Because I think within this offense, Cedric Alexander is just fine. Now, I think you could do better, but are you willing to cut the plug on some chemistry there with Alexander and Pavia? Try to look for another back. I don't know. I don't think they have to. I don't know that it's a mistake, but I can see why you would say it's a mistake.
The problem is I don't think they're your 1 and 2. They need to be your 3 and 4. And I think another back is they need a guy who can get away from people. They didn't have it this year. They didn't have it last year. It's glaring. To me, the receiving room was not spectacular, but it worked better than I would have thought it would this time a year ago. Those guys made some plays. Junior Sherrill had that catch against Alabama. Skinner made some nice plays. I didn't see running backs making any plays like those guys were making, other than maybe Newberry on the wheel route and that kind of thing. They can't. No, those guys can catch the ball. Maybe that's what you do a little bit more of. Although that's hard to do when your offensive line can't block guys. You need guys to stay in. But
That
I don't think we see that right. I don't think that they have, unless those guys were slowed by injuries enough to where they do have that gear and we just didn't see it because they weren't 100%. You've got to have a more explosive option in the running game than they've got.
VU Superior, now that the basketball practice facility is open, when will the football practice facility be completed? Couldn't tell you. I don't know that Vanderbilt knows that.
It's supposed to be done by next. Well, at least the outside's supposed to be. If it were me, and I've been saying this for a while, I would all hands on deck. Billy, you and I saw it when they didn't think they were going to have that ready for the season. That construction crew went from about 5 to 50.
Well, and there's a reason Clark Lee, after the Virginia Tech game, thanked, and you could tell, and he made that clear that that north end zone looked the way it did because of that last week of crunch time prep.
Unfortunately, and this is where the culture hasn't shifted, the biggest motivator over there is avoiding public embarrassment more than it is excellence. If the motivator were excellence, that thing would have been done by the start of 2022. I mean, A&M rebuilt an entire – you guys that listen to this, you've heard this before. You can harp on it all you want. It's not untrue. This is the slowest construction project in the history of SEC athletics. They should get all hands on deck, do what you did last year when you thought that – and they were one rainstorm away from that not being done, I think, for opening day. Yep. We didn't say much about it. We just let it go. But we all went there. I remember that we were looked at like, how are they going to get this done in time for kickoff? We can put a man on the moon. They should have. I think they should have. In my mind, the weight room is still a huge issue. Nobody's talking about that because the thing has shifted. But they got clobbered in the trenches as the year went along. You can't tell me that has no correlation to the weight room. You cannot tell. I mean, because if you weren't improving your weight room, why would you be building one, right? To me, I think they should try to expedite that, get that done by spring practice. They won't. My guess is they will. There's a chance that they will just kind of limp along and get it all the exterior part done. Because remember, the basketball thing was supposed to be done by August, right? When was that done? November? That's just kind of how it's gone. I mean, they started drawing this stuff up in 2019. We're about to be 2025. They just finished a $3.2 billion with the B dollar capital campaign. You cannot tell me they can't have this finished between now and spring practice if they really wanted. Maybe I'm wrong. That's where it should be, and I think that will help some of the issues that you see with depth and conditioning that popped up second half of the season. What will probably happen is that the exterior's finished, the forward-facing part that everybody sees, and the part that nobody sees will kind of limp along to the finish line, and like it did with basketball.
Dylan VU 32, are the two transfer cornerbacks that missed all of last year able to come back next year? Yes. Mark Davis and Marlon Jones will be back, like we've talked about. G-Barks 24, how much of the FCS proceeds will Vandy be getting from the championship games played at First Bank in 2025 and 26? I'm not sure. Seems like a smart move to get extra money for Vanderbilt when Vandy's not playing. I think that's a good move. I think it's a good move on their part. Chris, I don't know if you know anything on that.
No.
Let's see here. We got a ton. I don't know if are you short on time here, Chris, or?
I probably need to go in a minute. Let's pick the best three or four that we're going to answer. Maybe we'll table some more. Let's get the ones from next week from last week because people are waiting for those.
I got all the ones from last week. I got a few more from this week. Poor Vandy fan 615. Any word or thoughts on Pavia's situation or when a ruling might be made? Well, it's been made. So we can table that. Let's see. Have we turned a corner, or is this just a Franklin-esque flash in the pan? I still think that's a good question. I'm closer to saying it's not a flash in the pan, but I still want to see, with a full season of film out there on Pavia in this offense, can they do it again?
Yeah.
And Joey's made a really good point on Tim Beck a lot of weeks, and I know Beck caught some flack late in the season. Whether some of it was warranted or not can be up for debate. I think certain games it was, but at the end of the day, you got to 6 wins. Can you get to 6 next year? Can you get to 6? But also, if you just get to 6, if you're another 6-6 team next year, what does that do? I think at this point now, Chris, you're saying, okay, elevate. Can you get to 7? Can you get to 8? As hard as that's going to be.
Look, all 6 and
why
6s
not?
are not equal. That's not a
Yeah,
James
that's
Franklin.
true.
Well, I say that James Franklin's 6 and 7 actually was a really good 6 and 7 because they were close.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is not.
But I look at it as a Derek
beating,
Mason 6 and 7 or some bad, not great 6 and 7s.
Well, let me. This is not beating Alcorn State in Eastern Michigan 3 times, and then getting when Kentucky used to go 2-10 every year, and Tennessee was down and going 5 and 7. This is a completely different league. I thought their 6 and 6 was super because me, like I looked at it every way last season. I said, I don't know how they get to 6 and 6. Well, guess what? They got the same SEC schedule next year. They got Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech. I mean, if they go 6 and 6, that's an equivalent to me again of probably another, an 8 and 4, maybe even a 9 and 3. So, to me, that's with that schedule, that's progress.
That's a good point. Fair point. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a Franklin-esque flash in the pan. But I'm interested still. What does next year look like?
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Like I said, if you are. This is when you've got to put everything in overdrive, right? You can't go out there and go, oh, shoot, we got 10,000 of our fans in the stands and 20,000 off. This is when you go into overdrive and you take the things that are staring you into the face, the stuff that hasn't been finished. By the way, when are we hearing about a football practice facility? Is that just gone away? I mean, that was part of the plans in 2019. This is when you take the other stuff that's hanging around out there and you finish it off. You get a coherent plan for a season ticket base to where your players aren't outnumbered. You get the facilities done ahead of time, not 2 to 3 years after when they were supposed to be done. This is when you attack those things that are holding you back. If you're a winning athletic department, that's what you do.
All right, last one. VU Wars, just a thought exercise. And this is a good one. Who wins between this time and some of the peak, or who wins between this team, not time, who wins between this team, this basketball team, and some of the peak Kevin Stallings teams that made the tournament? Say 2011, 2012, when they beat Harvard before losing to Wisconsin in the NCAA tournament, the team that had Brad Tinsley and Kedron Johnson and Festus, Goulbourne, Jenkins, Parker, Chingang. That was a really good team. I mean, that team beat Kentucky, number 1 Kentucky, that went on to win the national title that year. I think that Stallings team, I mean, I know he had some really good teams even in 08 and 06, 07, Chris, that of course you covered. But, I mean, watching that 2011, 2012 team, I think is probably the best Stallings team. You might differ just from some of the other earlier teams. But that team, athletically, may be somewhat even with this year's team, but shooting and how smart they played and how good they were defensively, I think they beat this team. I don't think it's a blowout by any stretch, but, the Stallings in Memorial Gym with that team was almost impossible to beat.
I think you take peak Kevin Stallings, which would have been, starting with that Frigi team. They dipped a little bit, and then ending with the the team that beat Kentucky in that, because that's the last time Vanderbilt basketball was really good. The day they got beat by Wisconsin, we hadn't seen Vanderbilt basketball since then. Little bits and pieces, little run that Bryce Drew had, but like since 2011, Vanderbilt basketball to me has been dead and gone the way that I knew it. I think, and I really, like I said, Mark gets an A, if not an A plus, with what he's done. But you take a middle of the road Kevin team from then and match up against this one, and no disrespect to the guy. I think that's I think Kevin's teams are an 8 to 10 point favorite on a neutral floor.
I'm with you. That's the thing. Neutral floor. That's a big difference. You put those two teams in Memorial. That'd be
well, but then who's Memorial cheering for?
Right. That's a good point. But
yeah,
no, that's overall. You're good. It's just good to have Vanderbilt basketball, a good, fun Vanderbilt basketball product back.
Man, it's been so long. I think that's what when people talk about Memorial Magic, I'm like, I think I hear a lot of people that talk about it. I don't think they've ever seen it.
Well, no, and I think it's more of a Nashville staple than I remember,
Yes.
than I realized. I've got people that in the last month or two that are excited to watch Vanderbilt basketball that aren't Vanderbilt fans. They might cheer for Tennessee, but they've lived in Nashville and they know what Vanderbilt basketball can be. And I forgot how Nashville people love going to Memorial and love watching those SEC games.
And I know people got excited about the little run late 2 years ago for Stack, but I'm like, that just, to me, that's setting your standards really low, because that's not what it is. That's not what it should be. No, and if you grew up around it when it was just really humming, it's not even the same thing. And that's back to the attendance thing I said. That's kind of what I'm wondering about. Like, if they say they're 15-1 or whatever heading into Tennessee, what does it look like? Do you find 12,000 Vandy fans? Do you find 11? Maybe that's not fair, because maybe enough tickets have been sold. But to me, like, if you can't get to the point where you're getting at least 10, 11, 12 of your own people in the building anymore, that tells me that what you used to have is dead and gone. And it's not coming back without a concerted effort, strategic way to get it back.
Well, fans want to know what they're getting. I think is what they're getting, is what we're getting at. And maybe this is something to talk about next year. But if they start out really well in SEC play and you can trust what you're getting from this team, why shouldn't Memorial start to get back to what it was?
And look, a lot of the stuff that we've harped on with the fan base facilities, I know I will get the usual whatever blowback I get with this, but I want to see them be better. I want to see them push. I want to see what it looks like. The people who are listening to this, they deserve it. This is not about it's about doing your best. Do you make an effort? Are you trying to be championship level?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not there, what is standing between you and there to get there? And I just think people deserve that. We have not seen that kind of effort out of Vanderbilt in like it used to be, they didn't have to make the effort. The thing had been built and people just showed up and it was on autopilot. They've left it on autopilot for a long time. And that's, I want to see what this looks like.
Yeah.
If you're doing the things that winners do, that's what I want to see for them. That's all I want to see.
And I don't think that's too much to ask.
And it shouldn't be. Nope, I shouldn't have to feel bad about saying that. Fans shouldn't have to feel bad about saying that.
Well, and so far, you get your football team to a bowl after a 2-10 season. Your basketball team's 10-1. Your women's team is rolling. We'll see with baseball, but the winning has happened, and now I think you're starting to get to the point where, okay, are they doing enough with the fan base? To bring them back, and I know that's going to be a big talking point.
Billy enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll be here I'll be in Colorado next week, and I've got my hands full with the SEC stuff right now. And I'm going to have to probably monitor my pitch count. I need to, and
Right.
I just need to just step away and do
Right.
dumb, brainless
Well,
stuff
if
that I
this
haven't
is
had time to do in years. But all that to say, maybe we'll do this next week. Maybe we won't. But anyway.
well, if this is the last one before Christmas, Merry Christmas to you and your family, Chris. And it's good to have some winning to talk about. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, enjoy your. I know that you, and same for all of us. You worked more than you got paid for this year. That's just kind of how it goes. But thanks for
Hey,
thanks for being with us.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right, thank you for watching. We'll be back at it sometime. If not between now and New Year's, certainly we'll get it up and running again. Start a new year. If we don't see you again, Merry Christmas. God bless you. You've been watching and listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network.